Hello there, Crafty Doer. Jessica Michaels here with the weekly project post. For this week's project, I dipped into my gel printing scraps and created a few birthday cards. So if you want to see how easy it is to make your scraps look cohesive, even though they may have been from completely different projects and color schemes, keep watching. But before we get into it, please subscribe to my channel for more content like this and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more content like this. Here's how I went. First and foremost, I do apologize for my voice. I am feeling a bit under the weather, but this is the last thing I had to do to get this video up for the weekly project post. So I hope you give it a thumbs up, give me a little bit of encouragement here to continue to provide this content for you all. So to begin this project, I did grab a bunch of my scraps from previous projects. So some of these prints may look familiar to you if you've been following me along. But I say that so you know that these prints are genuinely from completely different projects with completely different color schemes. So to start off, I use packaging tape about 8 or 9 inches long. And then I start tearing my scraps apart and sticking them down to the tape. I saw this technique used by a few creators here on YouTube, and I thought it was a very smart idea because you can see how you're collaging, where you're collaging your papers, and also you're creating strips. I did find that for the corners and some of the edges where they didn't get to adhere to the tape, I used Mod Podge because that's what the other creators used. But I found that it smeared the ink, and I wasn't really liking the bit of gloss that the Mod Podge was leaving after it dried. So I set that aside and opt for something different in the other strips. This is the first strip I've ever created. So I was experimenting a bit, but I cut off the edges just like so. And when I turned it around, I realized that I could also probably use the back. So you can use either side, I guess, depending on your scraps. But this is where I grabbed my Art Institute glitter glue to adhere the rest of the corners and edges that didn't stick down to the first time with the Mod Podge. And for the rest of the strips, I actually continue to use the Art glitter glue. I liked using it instead of the Mod Podge and the brush because the glue itself has that little like needle dispenser, and so it was easier to get under the edges that were lifted and the little corners that needed to be adhered. So that was my second strip. This is my third strip, and I tried to be a little bit more strategic about it. So I tear off some of these like orange kind of colors here, and that's what I decided that I wanted to make 2 different sets of cards, one more feminine and one more masculine, because as my description mentioned, I am making birthday cards for my stash. I went in there and to grab one, and I realized I was out, so I needed to restock. So here you see I was trying to be a little bit more strategic, and I loved this process. I think there really isn't a perfect technique when you're doing collaging like this, because, well, for one, although this strip looks beautiful, we're going to end up cutting them up. But either way, the strip looks beautiful because if you do end up using it as a strip itself, I mean, you have a perfect color scheme going on there. So this is the one thing that I end up doing throughout the entire strips to help all these scraps look cohesive, is I basically treat it as one whole canvas. So one of the steps that I do for this is I add stamping in a few images with this frayed burlap, and I add them on both. Actually, I end up adding the frayed burlap on all 4 strips as like the base color. When you end up cutting these strips, you're still able to see the same elements in each piece that you end up cutting. And that's the idea behind helping all your scraps look cohesive. For the strips that I end up using for the feminine cards, I grab some salt water taffy with this kind of a branchy leaf stamp. And the reason why I chose the salt water taffy is because there was already those hues of pinks and peaches in there. And so I go back to these 2 cards, and I end up using Salvage Patina to add a little more color to them, making them a little bit more masculine with the hues of blue. Now these stamps are very old stamps, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. My kind and dear neighbor, actually she knew I was a crafter and I guess she used to stamp a very long time ago, and she needed to get these off of her hands, and she handed me a box load of just stamps. And so I dug into those, and that's what I end up using to stamp my collage strips. So another element that I add to the idea behind making your scraps look cohesive is I run all of the strips through my sewing machine and add a little bit of stitching. So now you can see that all of the strips are starting to become to look like they all came from, one page or one canvas. So a third element that I use for this idea is to use some sort of die. For example, I use Emily Moore Designs card sentiment dies. They have these really pretty stitching around the edges. I know I say that as I cut this tag out, and it's the one of the 3 that doesn't have the stitching, but the A2 liner card die has it, and also the die that I end up using to cut out the sentiment has a stitching out as well. So it brings it all together. I do end up using Emily Moore Designs Birthday Sentiment stamp set for all of these cards. She has a variety of fonts and sentiments. And if you missed my video that I did last week's weekly project, is strictly using all of her products. She has this amazing Card Makers Essentials bundle that I highly recommend. I'll leave the link in the description box so you can go and check that out, see if it's something that you may be interested in. So after I have my sentiment chosen and cut out, I go ahead and start to design the first panel. And I choose to go with strips. Now, because I ran this through my sewing machine, I did have to go in and trim the thread a little bit. It's a little extra step I wasn't really expecting or planning on, but that's just what I had to do. No big deal. So I end up just adhering these strips down next to each other, and I noticed that some of the thread lifted when I ran it through my cutting board. I wasn't happy at first until I adhered it to the panel, and then it was just another element of texture, which I immediately fell in love with once I saw it all put together. Sometimes that's just how crafting happens. So for this collage strip, I use Emily's die that has this really nice shape tail. In my last video, I used the same or a similar design with this die. to create a card. And if you like this one, you will definitely like that one. So for the sentiment, I had already cut out the flag die strip, and I cut it too short with my scissors, and it wasn't big enough for the sentiment that I wanted, but I wanted that sentiment. So all I did was I rubbed off the beginning of the sentiment, and then just for extra precaution, I added a little tape so that the ink wouldn't get on there. And so for the third card, I just used a circle die to cut out the third collage strip. And then I used my hole puncher here to cut out the smaller circles, and then just kind of layered. But now I want to enhance the colors of the collage paper because they are so pretty. So I ended up choosing like this burgundy and this really deep like turquoise blue for the masculine cards, and then the burgundy for the feminine cards. I was very pleased to have used up my scraps and restocked my birthday card stash. I would love to know what some of your favorite ways to use up your scraps are. Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't done so already, you should sign up for my newsletter, Word and Recap, where you will be the first to get freebies and exclusives, monthly encouragement, and a monthly recap of the weekly project post. As usual, the supply list for the products I used in this project are in the description box below. I'd be so grateful if you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. I hope you found some inspiration to create. And remember that you create because you were fearfully and wonderfully created. Don't forget that you belong, even if paper crafting isn't your thing.